The concrete facade is being repaired and all the windows replaced as work progresses from top to bottom. The salt air and the age of the building eventually left council with no choice but to revamp the multi-storey landmark. But the covers won't come off until at least next May.
There's been some difficulty with some of the materials that the contractors have been using. This hasn't added to the cost, but it is not assisting the completion of the job. But I believe those difficulties are now overcome.
When complete, the update is expected to save council money, with a much more efficient air conditioning system possible once the leaking windows are sealed. Meanwhile, council is also having to repair parking meters in the city centre after recent attacks by vandals. The damage is frustrating as well as costly to council.
What concerns me more is a loss in service. The meters are there to service the needs of the parking community. That is to say, we need a turnover of sites so that people all get a fair go.
But motorists are warned that overstaying their welcome could still be costly, with officers using the chalk and tyre method to book drivers where the meters are broken. Brooke Webster, NBN News.
Coach Lee Sterry couldn't wait to get out to training today. He'd spent most of it finalising his one-year deal and now contracts for his players.
Hopefully we can start signing the players tonight or tomorrow.
Not that it matters, the players are staying loyal. In fact, new recruits are arriving. The first, former Kiwi international Chris Zoritich.
I've got a point to prove to a few people to show that, I'm still good enough and, I'm happy to do it at Newcastle.
After losing two key defenders, the former Sydney Olympic and Brisbane Strikers star is an important buy.
He scores a few goals from set pieces as well, so that's a luxury. And but overall, I'll be looking for his leadership at the back.
No news on the club's general manager or even a name for the Newcastle side that's owned by businessman Con Constantine. It's expected that will be announced this week after players are signed up, as Mr Constantine wants them to have a major input into the club's title. For now, the squad continues preparation for its first hit-out this weekend against Parramatta Power and then the season opener in less than 2 weeks.
At the moment, we're just trying to catch up, to be honest, on the weeks that we've lost, the 2 weeks that we've lost in training. We're to catch that up very quickly. And
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The PGA National Futures is considered the tournament for aspiring trainee golfers, not just in Australia, but as this year's field proves, the world over. Golf trainees from the US, UK, South Africa and New Zealand will join Australia's best at Newcastle Golf Course from November the 13th to compete in the event that's a launch pad to the big time.
This tournament gives them access to play in the US if they win, and the US Assistants Championship is a very highly regarded championship in the States.
Belmont's Trent Berry helped launch the tournament today. He placed 5th in his first crack at the Futures in 1998. The 2000 tournament will be his last, and he's hoping to repeat the success of last year's winner, local boy Graham Stockley.
I had a pretty rough start to the year, but I've sort of been doing a bit of work with the putting and so forth, and it's all starting to come good now, so hopefully it'll continue to be that way for the next couple of weeks. So.
Aspiring amateurs also have the opportunity to rub shoulders with up-and-comers in a tournament pro-am.
It gives them a great opportunity to play with professionals whom they otherwise would not get an opportunity to play with, and also play on a championship golf course.
Blake Doyle, NBN News. Yesterday's announcement that recreational fishermen will be charged $25 a year for the privilege of dropping a line has angered many in the sport. Serious weekend anglers like Barry Clark say it'll turn fisheries officers into debt collectors.
Fisheries officers will no longer be seen as a liaison between New South Wales fisheries and anglers, but will be seen as policemen going through and enforcing legislation and making sure that if you don't have a licence, you're going to get booked.
Weekend fishermen in Lake Macquarie and Botany Bay have been told that the new fees could be used to buy out professional fishing licences in their areas, closing down commercial netting there. But fishing groups remain sceptical.
Some people are going to be disappointed in that because they assumed that the professional fishermen in Botany Bay and Lake Macquarie would be thrown out, and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case.
Anglers say they simply want value for their money.
What's most disappointing is that we have a degraded fishery in New South Wales right up and down the coast, and not simply in Lake Macquarie and Botany Bay, and these are going to be the prioritised areas. And it really is disappointing, to say the least, that we're not looking at conservation measures and a properly managed fishery of New South Wales as a whole.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. At 34 metres long, the super yacht Sequel is capable of cruising the world in comfort and style. But after serving as a floating motel for its American owners during the Olympics, it hit a snag last night off the coast of Newcastle.
A day out of Sydney, our steering went, and it's all hydraulic. We had to come into Newcastle to effect repairs, which we're doing now.
While the repairman does his thing, the crew of 4 can relax in the well-appointed stateroom, complete with its widescreen TV, or recline in one of the double guest cabins. But for a really good night's sleep, you'd head for the palatial owner's quarters, complete with its own big screen. The vessel's retired owners will join the crew again at the Barrier Reef and will take 2 years to sail home.
We've done sort of Europe, America, Pacific, now New Zealand, and we're finishing Australia, around the top, through Asia, etc, etc.
Sequel's 43-metre mast stands 13 metres higher than Newcastle's Stockton Bridge. Skipper Peter Verdon admits he has a great job.
My wife's with me, and we have a couple of more crew, and we travel the world at someone else's expense.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
If these are the images tourists are greeted with when they enter Newcastle, it seems unlikely the city will ever become a leading tourist destination, as even Newcastle's Lord Mayor admits.
When you talk about city presentation and how the city looks, the cleanliness and the maintenance, there is a lot to be done.
In fact, John Tate was voted in on a promise to make the city more presentable to tourists and help create a new growth industry to take up where the city's heavy industry left off. But he says that won't happen until funding from council's budget to clean up the city kicks in.
I would hope, I'd expect, indeed it's my objective, that we have a much improved situation in 12 months' time.
When BHP Steelworks closed its doors just over a year ago, tourism was hailed as the saviour of the region's economy. But even though it's expected to take another 12 months before official tourism growth figures are released, the tourism organisation says evidence of growth in Newcastle is in all the high-rise accommodation buildings now up and running. The tourism organisation also claims that Newcastle's tourism growth won't happen overnight.
It's a slow process, and changing images, changing perceptions, it takes time.
No place for cons here, just the Hunter's Best Speedway drivers and their machines inside the walls of Maitland Jail. All Speedway classes were represented, including the super sedans. Veteran driver Peter Garrett, who's approaching his 30th Speedway season, will be out to beat drivers half his age.
With all the young fellas that are coming into it, well, I suppose us old blokes are going to have to start moving backwards a bit, but we'll give them a run for their money this year.
Another seasoned performer, Graham Lilford, competing this year in an AMCAR. AMCARs are now in their third season on the circuit, and it's starting to get competitive.
In past years we've just been able to do our heats and qualify straight for a final, but now with the more cars it's obviously more competition, so you're going to have to try a bit harder to make the final on the night.
And Australia's only female sidecar driver and 1999 Rookie of the Year, Alana Harrington, will have her third year on the track, out to beat her male counterparts.
I've come through a whole lot of mechanical problems the first year and learning and using racecraft, and finally I'm starting to get in front of the boys.
The season kicks off on Saturday night with super sedans and street stocks.
When you're shopping for 9 months' supplies, the shopping list looks more like the phone book.
80 tins of fruit, 40 tins of soup, 72 packs of cups of soup.
The shelves at the supermarket were looking a little thin today as Tony filled a dozen trolleys with over 1,000 items needed to get him around the globe. Because the voyage is non-stop and unassisted, he must take everything he needs.
I'm allowing for 9 months worth of supplies. I expect to be out there between 6 and 7 months, 9 months worth of supplies, so to take me through until sort of June, July next year if I just happen to be there that long.
Bilo's Supermarkets is picking up the tab.
Average family would spend around about $150 a week. Tony will probably walk out the store today with $4,500, which is a lot of groceries.
With wife Lorraine and daughter Holly helping, the train of trolleys grew and grew.
Oh, it was huge. I've never seen anything like it.
A bit nervous about the actual day when he leaves, but once he's out of sight and we'll all calm down and know we just wait for him to come back then.
Tony set sail from Newcastle Harbour on October the 15th. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Four years after toxic waste was uncovered, a court handed down fines of $15,000.
The director of a company called Whole Rock Proprietary Limited was operating a waste facility on this site in Putty without lawful authority.
Now the Environmental Protection Authority is working towards remediation of the site after finding it poses a significant risk of harm to the environment. The EPA already knows hydrocarbons, some carcinogenic, are in the soil in 3 different areas of the property.
What we want to do is have a better understanding of what's actually happening there, to see if a lot of that waste or any of it is actually moving around the site or off the site and down into the groundwater.
It can advise on what action needs to be taken when the investigations are complete.
Once we better understand what's happening there, we would then declare the site as a remediation site, and then once again anyone can come forward with a voluntary proposal to clean up the site.
The authority has the power to force action if a plan isn't put forward voluntarily. Brooke Webster, NBN News.
2 months ago in Finland, Michael Guest had his first drive of the new Hyundai World Rally car. Despite leaving the front spoiler somewhere in the Finnish countryside, Guest and his team managed to iron out plenty of bugs. Today he was studying the in-car videos from Finland as part of his preparation for the Rally of San Remo in Italy in 10 days' time.
Yeah, it's the first time for me on tarmac in this new World Rally car. I did some testing just north of a place called Toulouse in France. I did 3 days tarmac testing in the World Rally car, and that went extremely well.
He says his 300 horsepower Hyundai will be well suited to the 400-kilometre road course.
Sheer cliff faces and massive drop-offs and Armco, and the roads are very, very narrow and twisty and big, high average speed as well. So, and just because there's no kitty litter there like you get on a touring car track, it doesn't mean that you don't push. If you want to do well, you've got to push as hard as you can.
From San Remo, it's off to Rally Australia in Perth and then another exotic international rally.
So we have Rally Australia, and then actually I've been invited to go to Jamaica on the 1st of December to do a rally in the Caribbean. So that's pretty exciting too, and something different.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
These are the scenes the Hunters soccer fans have been waiting for, the signatures of key players proving beyond doubt the city's presence in the NSL. As fellow players trained in the background one by one, they signed on the dotted line in front of club boss Con Constantine. Former Breakers coach Lee Sterry says he's relieved to have the players signed up. Newcastle will line up against Parramatta Power in a trial this weekend, and Sterry admits the side's underdone.
So we're behind the 8 ball a bit, so we're just gearing up to try and get to 90 minutes at the first grade pace, but certainly we're behind at the moment.
Meanwhile, the question on everyone's lips is, what will the team be called?
I'd rather a name be a nickname myself than a nickname be in the title, so that's where I feel. But, some names work, some don't.
Con Constantine is expected to announce that tomorrow. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Yeah, very exciting, something I didn't really expect, so yeah, it was very exciting to be involved in the ceremony.
From the outside, Thermaline looks like all the other companies in the industrial area of Warners Bay, but on the inside, for 8 weeks, it was like no other. On top of this humble bench, the multi-tube ring assembly was constructed, the main frame of the Olympic Games cauldron. Measuring 4.5 metres in diameter, the adjustment process on the assembly was long and tedious.
Tracking of the gas had to be done in a certain period of time, and also the heights of the nozzles were changed probably 15 times. Just to get it right.
Employees were sworn to secrecy, with work on the cauldron carried out early in the morning, late at night and on weekends. Upon its completion in January, it was transported to Sydney. The next time Thermaline employees saw the cauldron was with the rest of the world at the opening ceremony. And that now famous moment when it stalled caused some heart-stopping moments.
Yes, it was hands and knees about a metre from the television. I was concerned, but very delighted when it ignited.
Catherine Turner, NBN News.
He's an ominous sight at any championship, and Scott Chaffey's mates know all about it. Fellow Tamworth fighter John Evans was the first to get in Scott's way for the state Koshiki title. It took little time before Chaffey chalked up the win. Then it was another hometown rival, and Ben Glover's turn to face off in the final against his good friend. But they looked anything like it midway through the bout. With mates like Scott, who needs enemies? Throughout the bout, Chaffey was dominant with both hands and feet. In fact, the match was stopped early after he won through nip-on, scoring a perfect blow to the body. The teenager added to an already impressive list of trophies, which includes a world title and now 2 bruised mates.
Life's got very busy, and often free time is something that's used up doing other things, and it takes effort to put in time to relax.
Arriving by car from the Central Coast at around 3:20 tomorrow, the Paralympic torch heads straight for the Hunter Sports Centre at Glendale. There, a mini Paralympics will take place, with the torch doing a lap of honour.
What we're planning on having is all the kids and all the people with disabilities actually inside the track area, so they've got a bird's eye view basically of the torch going around.
From there, the flame's taken through Cardiff to Charlestown, then along the Pacific Highway and into Hamilton. It's eventually carried along Hunter Street to Wheeler Place, where Knights legend Tony Butterfield will light a community cauldron at 6:30.
Followed by some entertainment, both community-based acts and professional performers, including John English.
A Paralympic ticket van will also be there. Golfer Jack Newton runs the first leg at 8:30 the next morning, the relay weaving its way through the inner city before heading to Lambton, Charlestown, Belmont, a lunchtime celebration at Pelican, before going through Swansea on its way to the Central Coast. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Tony Mowbray has packed gear and groceries into every space aboard his Coal 43 yacht, and he'll need every bit of it as he sails solo, non-stop and unassisted around the globe.
One of the problems with this charting procedure is you've got to blow it up every now and again.
Bravado aside, he admits feeling a few nerves.
It's been a huge day trying to not be distracted too much, and I'm very nervous, worried about the weak links. What have I missed? What have I forgotten?
Lake Macquarie Yacht Club is preparing to plot his every move.
Lake Macquarie Yacht Club has had no one sail non-stop around the world, and it's the time's drawing nigh, the excitement's mounting, and we'll be watching Tony's progress with great interest.
Tony set sail from Queen's Wharf in Newcastle at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
As I've always said, I'm a very, very proud Novocastrian, and it will give me great pleasure to see as many of Novocastrians there on Sunday to give me a wave and a cheer, and even more so in 6 months' time, hopefully, when I get it back in.
Meantime, World 505 and 49er champion Chris Nicholson may have missed out on an Olympic medal, but this week returned home to an Australian sports medal awarded for his achievements in sailing. Lake sailors Bob Snape and Kevin Buxton also received the honour. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
As far as police know, 30-year-old Kevin Naismith was the last person to see Danny Worsley and Mark Banks before they disappeared on the 16th of August last year. The men's bodies were later found in shallow graves at Stockton Beach. They were cremated and evidence showed they were probably shot dead. Kevin Naismith was questioned by police shortly before this discovery. The videotape of the interview played during evidence at a Supreme Court trial in Newcastle today. On trial for the murder of the men, Naismith told police that Danny Worsley was a good mate, liked by everybody. He said he was aware Worsley supplied marijuana and said, "I lent him $10,000 on one occasion. I didn't ask him what it was for. I've known the bloke for 25 years. I'd do anything for him." When asked by police what he thought had happened to the men, he replied, "It's a dangerous business. I don't want to think about it," before breaking down. The trial continues tomorrow. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
In the early hours of December 18, 1997, John and Susan Stewart were subject to a violent attack while they were sleeping at their home at the Lochinvar Equestrian Centre west of Maitland. Both survived the vicious assault, even though John Stewart was seriously injured. Today in Newcastle District Court, the man charged with organising 3 men to carry out the attack, 41-year-old Lionel Desange, pleaded not guilty to conspiring to murder and causing grievous bodily harm with intent to murder. Crown Prosecutor Peter Barnett told the court that over the coming weeks it would hear evidence of friction between the accused and Mr Stewart, who were both part owners in the centre. The Crown said the business venture hadn't gone as well as planned and that witnesses would tell the court Desange offered a man $30,000 to knock Mr Stewart off. John Stewart himself took the stand today. The veterinary surgeon gave evidence about the business structure he undertook with Mr Desange and a third party. The trial is expected to take several weeks. David Gardner, NBN News.
The 6-inch guns at Newcastle's Fort Scratchley are famous for returning fire at a Japanese submarine during World War II. But the 80-pounder cannons used to protect the harbour from a perceived Russian threat until 1898 are lesser known. When all 4 of the fort's old cannons were found in a scrapyard, the state government agreed to fund the restoration of one and the building of the gun carriage to hold it. The job was done by apprentices at the Hunter Valley Training Company who used local products to build the carriage from original plans.
The timbers that have been used have come from the Morpeth Bridge and also from the bridge at Clarencetown. So there is a real history of the valley on that in that gun and the gun carriage at this stage.
Good to see it finally come together when we started putting all the bits we made together and seeing what it looked like. It was good.
The 80-pounder will become another working feature of Newcastle's Fort Scratchley Museum. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The man behind the nation's largest non-bank lender, Aussie Home Loans, John Simon, was special guest at the Newcastle Business Club luncheon today. As well as divulging a few secrets of his success, he predicted the Reserve Bank will sit tight on increasing interest rates.
We've already had 5 in less than a year, but I'm not so sure that we will see any more rate hikes over the next 3 or 4 months. I think a lot of the economists are now thinking more it's 50-50 rather than a foregone conclusion.
He says if there is an interest rate hike, it will be because of international influences.
Australia, like all other countries, are now part of the global economy, and we are held captive to what happens in New York, what happens in Asia, what happens in different parts of the world.
He also took a swipe at banks and their tendency to increase fees and charges.
The banks are still plundering big time and getting zillions of dollars from the poor old consumer, and competition just isn't there in those areas, and I think it'll be a little while before competition can force the banks to change their habits.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.